Clara Bennett had spent nearly 20 years building her company into one of the most respected firms in the country. Investors trusted her judgment, employees admired her leadership, and the media often described her as a woman who never let emotions interfere with business. But there was one part of her life that no board meeting or financial success could replace: her 11-year-old daughter, Sophie. After her husband's death 5 years earlier, Clara had promised herself that Sophie would never feel alone. No matter how demanding work became, breakfast together and bedtime conversations were non-negotiable. Those quiet moments reminded Clara why she worked so hard in the first place. Everything changed when a series of anonymous threats began arriving at the company's headquarters. At first, they seemed like empty attempts to frighten a successful executive. Then someone managed to obtain Sophie's school schedule. A black SUV was seen outside her school more than once, and a stranger even asked one of the teachers questions about her daily routine. The police increased patrols around the house and advised Clara to hire professional protection. She resisted the idea at first. She didn't want Sophie growing up surrounded by armed guards. But after another threatening message appeared, she realized she couldn't rely on hope alone. Among several candidates, one man immediately caught her attention. Daniel Hayes was a former soldier with years of experience in high-risk security assignments. He wasn't loud or overly confident. Instead, he listened carefully, answered every question honestly, and spoke with the calm discipline of someone who had already faced life's worst situations. Within days of starting the job, Daniel earned everyone's trust. He treated the household staff with respect, stayed alert without making Sophie feel watched, and quietly handled every detail of her safety. Clara occasionally noticed him looking at her with a thoughtful expression, as though he were trying to remember something important. She assumed he was simply adjusting to his new employer. She had no idea that Daniel recognized her instantly. Years ago, before Clara became a famous CEO, she had saved the life of a wounded young soldier during a chaotic rescue operation. Daniel had never forgotten the stranger who refused to leave him behind, even though she had completely forgotten him. Daniel approached every day with the same discipline he had learned in the army. Before Sophie left for school, he inspected the vehicle, reviewed the route, and spoke briefly with the driver. He never acted overprotective, but he noticed details that others ignored. A car parked in the same place for 3 mornings, a man pretending to read a newspaper near the school gate, or a delivery van arriving at unusual hours. Nothing escaped his attention. Clara appreciated his professionalism, though she often wondered why he had chosen such a quiet life after serving in the military. Daniel never talked much about his past. Whenever Sophie asked him if he had been a hero, he simply smiled and replied, "Real heroes are ordinary people who do the right thing when they have no other choice." One rainy afternoon, Clara invited Daniel into her office to discuss recent security updates. As she poured him a cup of coffee, he noticed an old framed photograph on the bookshelf. It showed Clara years earlier, wearing a volunteer vest at a humanitarian relief camp. His eyes rested on the picture for a moment longer than he intended. The image brought back memories he had carried for more than a decade. He remembered smoke filling the air, the sound of explosions in the distance, and the unbearable pain after being trapped beneath collapsed concrete. Injured and barely conscious, he had believed he would never see home again. Then a young volunteer had appeared, ignoring the danger around her. She refused to leave until rescue workers reached him, even though everyone else was running for safety. Before the ambulance doors closed, she squeezed his hand and said, "You'll make it. Don't give up." Those simple words stayed with him through months of recovery. Daniel had spent years wondering who that woman was. He never knew her name until he saw Clara Bennett's photograph in a business magazine announcing her company's success. The moment he recognized her face, he realized fate had given him a chance he never expected. He hadn't accepted the job because of the salary or the prestige. He accepted it because the woman who had once saved his life now needed someone she could trust, even if she didn't remember him at all. A week passed without any major incident, and Clara slowly began to believe the threats had faded. Business meetings returned to normal, and Sophie was once again laughing with her friends after school. Even so, Daniel refused to lower his guard. Experience had taught him that real danger often appeared when people started feeling safe. One Friday evening, Clara attended a charity fundraiser at a luxury hotel and decided to bring Sophie along. Daniel arrived early, checked every entrance, spoke with hotel security, and quietly mapped out the emergency exits. Everything seemed ordinary, but something about the crowd unsettled him. A man near the ballroom kept changing positions while pretending to talk on his phone. Another repeatedly watched Sophie's movements instead of the event. Daniel discreetly informed local security and stayed close without alarming Clara or Sophie. As the event ended, guests began leaving through the main entrance. Suddenly, the suspicious men moved toward Sophie. One reached for her arm, while another tried to block Daniel's path. Daniel reacted without hesitation. He pulled Sophie behind him and ordered Clara to move back inside the hotel. Years of military training took over. He disarmed one attacker, forced another to the ground, and used the surrounding barriers to keep them away from Sophie. The struggle lasted less than a minute, but it felt much longer. Hotel security and nearby police officers rushed in after hearing the commotion, and the attackers were quickly arrested. Sophie was shaken but unharmed. Back at home that night, Clara thanked Daniel repeatedly. She couldn't imagine what might have happened if he hadn't noticed the danger before anyone else. Daniel simply replied that protecting Sophie was his responsibility. As Clara walked him to the front door, she noticed a faded scar running across his forearm. Something about it stirred a distant memory she couldn't quite place. Daniel noticed her expression, but said nothing. Some stories, he believed, revealed themselves only when the time was right. For now, it was enough to know that the woman who had once saved his life would never have to face danger alone again. The attempted kidnapping became national news within hours. Reporters praised the quick response of hotel security, but those who had witnessed the incident knew the truth. Daniel's calm decisions had prevented a terrifying situation from becoming a tragedy. Clara tried to thank him with a generous bonus, but he politely declined. "I was only doing the job you hired me to do," he said. A few days later, Clara insisted that Daniel join her and Sophie for dinner at home. It was the first time he had sat at the table instead of waiting nearby. As they talked, Sophie excitedly asked Daniel about his time in the military. He answered carefully, avoiding stories about violence and choosing instead to speak about teamwork, discipline, and the importance of never leaving anyone behind. When dinner ended, Clara brought out an old photo album while looking for childhood pictures of Sophie. As she turned the pages, a faded photograph slipped onto the floor. It showed a much younger Clara wearing a volunteer vest at a humanitarian relief camp years earlier. Daniel quietly picked it up. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I remember this day," Daniel said softly. Clara looked at him with surprise. He took a slow breath before continuing. "I was one of the soldiers injured during that attack. You stayed with me until the rescue team arrived. You kept telling me not to close my eyes." The room fell silent. Clara searched his face, and suddenly the memories returned. The frightened young soldier covered in dust, the broken building, the ambulance doors closing as she wished him a safe life. She had never imagined they would meet again. "You were that soldier?" she whispered. Daniel nodded with a gentle smile. "You saved my life long before I had the chance to protect your daughter. I never forgot your kindness." Tears filled Clara's eyes as she realized that the man she had hired as an employee had been carrying a debt of gratitude for years. She reached out and hugged him without saying a word. From that day forward, Daniel was no longer just Sophie's bodyguard. He became part of their family, proving that genuine kindness never disappears. It simply finds its way back when the moment is right.